War, with its ruthless nature, has always unveiled innovative and often deadly methods. The Vietnam War was no exception. In our video, we will take a look at the most terrifying traps used during this conflict, shedding light on the horrifying tactics that marked this chapter in history. Punji stakes. During the Vietnam War, one of the most brutal traps employed by the Viet Cong guerrillas was the punji stakes. These weren't mere exaggerations of men. They were primarily made of bamboo, meticulously crafted as killing tools. Sharpened to a deadly precision and hardened in fire, these stakes could easily pierce any armor, posing a lethal threat to soldiers. What made these stakes even more perilous was the infusion of poisonous substances. Often guerrillas would coat the tips with animal feces, toxic substances, or venom. This was done not just to make the wound fatal, but to induce infections that would weaken the soldier, thereby diminishing the enemy's manpower and morale. Strategically placed punji stakes were typically concealed in pits and camouflaged to blend seamlessly with the natural environment, making their detection challenging. When a soldier unwittingly stepped on such a trap, they would impale themselves, causing significant physical harm. The psychological impact had lasting implications. The fear of inadvertently stepping into an invisible pit in Vietnam's dense forests was a tangible and ever-present danger. Historically, the use of punji stakes can be seen in various guerrilla wars around the world. However, they gained particular notoriety during the Vietnam War. Guerrillas would place them around their camps or on known paths of the American and South Vietnamese forces. Soldiers had to be specially trained to detect and avoid them. Even though special boots offering limited protection were developed, a well-placed punji trap could still cause considerable harm. Beyond the physical danger, the psychological strain on American soldiers played to the guerrillas' advantage. The fear and anxiety amongst the enemy ranks made patrols nerve-wracking, creating favorable conditions for guerrilla attacks. Punji stakes, simple in design, serve as a grim reminder of how nature itself can be transformed into a lethal weapon, showcasing the extremes warfare can reach. Bamboo camper. Bamboo, due to its versatility and abundance in Vietnam, became an indispensable tool in crafting numerous guerrilla traps. Among these traps, the bamboo whip stood out as a particularly terrifying instrument, reflecting the deadly efficacy of Viet Cong guerrilla warfare tactics. Crafted with a simple yet ingenious design, the bamboo whip was used much like a typical whip, but with a lethal twist. A strong, flexible bamboo shoot would be bent and tensioned using a trap wire concealed amidst thick underbrush or on narrow forest trails. The trap lay in wait for an unsuspecting foot or hand to touch the wire. Once triggered, the bamboo shoot would snap upright with violent force, delivering a devastating blow to anything in its path. To further enhance its lethal nature, the tip of the bamboo was often outfitted with sharp objects or spikes. The resulting injuries could easily incapacitate a soldier with deep, grievous wounds. The simplicity of the bamboo whip mechanism was the primary reason for its widespread use. It required minimal materials and could be set up quickly, allowing the guerrillas to establish multiple traps in a short span of time. Moreover, being primarily made of natural materials, it blended seamlessly with the environment, making detection incredibly challenging. Soldiers recounted harrowing experiences of walking through seemingly serene forest slopes, only to be suddenly and violently injured by these bamboo traps. The unpredictability of these traps created a constant atmosphere of alertness and tension. No step was safe, and every brush against a leaf or vine could potentially lead to the swift and painful retaliation of a whip. In a war characterized by advanced weapons and machinery, the bamboo whip was evidence of the effectiveness of simple, natural traps. The Viet Cong guerrillas' mastery in using objects from their surroundings transformed the forest into a minefield filled with dangers. With its silent weight and brutal execution, The bamboo whip showcases the sheer ruthlessness of guerrilla warfare. Bouncing Betty. During the Vietnam War, although simple indigenous traps were widely used, there were instances where more complex devices were employed. The Bouncing Betty was one such device that instilled a profound sense of fear among the troops. Its unpredictable nature and destructive impact made it a potent weapon in the Viet Cong's arsenal. Unlike standard landmines, the Bouncing Betty was equipped with an airburst explosion targeting the most vulnerable parts of the human body, the torso and head. Its radial shrapnel dispersion ensured not just the individual triggering the mine, but also those around them suffered injuries. These created horrendous wounds that more often incapacitated rather than killed, leaving soldiers both physically and psychologically scarred. Knowing that the danger lurked not only in the enemy's weapons but also beneath the ground, they walked on evoked perpetual anxiety among the troops. Booby-trap tunnels were another lethal tactic employed by the Viet Cong. These tunnels served as hideouts, supply routes, and deadly traps for the unsuspecting American and South Vietnamese forces. Carefully planned in their construction and design, these tunnels contained living quarters, storage areas, weapons caches, and even makeshift hospitals. Their narrowness, designed to hinder the larger Western soldiers, made navigating them exceedingly challenging. But the perils did not end there. The Viet Cong ingeniously incorporated various booby traps into the tunnel design, amplifying their hazardous nature. Traps with punji stakes, swinging bamboo traps, concealed grenade traps, and other lethal surprises awaited uninvited guests. Inside the tunnels, soldiers faced not just the threat of traps, but also the suffocating air and darkness, intensifying psychological stress and panic. The Viet Cong employed specialized holes in their ventilation routes to prevent potential intrusions. The claustrophobic environment and maze-like nature of the tunnels made it easy for soldiers to lose their way and become easy targets for lurking enemy combatants. Encounters within these tunnels are rife with stories of close combat and tragedy, showcasing the Viet Cong's creativity and resilience against technologically superior adversaries. The Vietnam War's booby-trap tunnels and Bouncing Bettys were pivotal in shaping the conflict's fate. They demonstrated how the Viet Cong could effectively challenge their adversaries' technological supremacy with limited resources. Every tunnel told a tale of craftsmanship, resistance, and the lengths people would go to defend their homeland. The war landscape was fraught with dangers, and these traps added another layer of fear, leaving a lasting impact on those who fought in this grueling conflict. Booby traps. The battlefields of Vietnam were laden with traps, serving as evidence of the Viet Cong's ability to turn the terrain itself into an adversary. Among the myriad dangers, tripwire grenades stood out for their lethal simplicity and efficacy, perpetually heightening the state of alert required by the troops in the region. The installation of these traps, although primitive, proved effective for several reasons. Firstly, the wire used for the trip was often made almost invisible, making it particularly difficult to detect, especially under the dim shadows of the Vietnam forests. Secondly, these grenades could be equipped in various configurations: a single grenade for a targeted explosion or multiple grenades to amplify the devastation. The damages stemming from tripwire grenades were highly effective. A sudden explosion could lead to the death or serious injury of anyone within its radius. The shrapnel emanating from the grenade added an additional layer of danger, as these fast-moving fragments could penetrate both armor and flesh, leading to secondary injuries. Even if soldiers were outside the direct impact zone, the shock waves could lead to concussions or other internal injuries. Beyond the physical harm, the psychological effects of these traps were profound. Their randomness in placement and unpredictability of explosions created a perpetual atmosphere of anxiety. Soldiers had to tread carefully at every step, knowing that the slightest misstep could trigger a deadly blast. The knowledge that such devastation could be caused by an unseen inanimate object heightened the stress and tension of war. Additionally, tripwire grenades disrupted troop movements and logistics. Patrols were slowed down as soldiers had to proceed with extra caution, scanning for potential wires. Furthermore, when a grenade was triggered, it not only inflicted immediate damage, but also signaled the Viet Cong about the position and movement of enemy forces. This dual function of direct harm and indirect intelligence made them a preferred choice for guerrilla fighters. The tripwire grenades of the Vietnam War symbolized the broader nature of the conflict. In a terrain where visibility was limited and dangers lurked at every turn, the simplest devices could become the most potent weapons. Through skill and adaptability, the Viet Cong managed to transform a handheld weapon into an omnipresent threat, reminding their adversaries that in guerrilla warfare, the environment itself is always a lurking enemy. Mace traps? With its dense forests and guerrilla tactics, the Vietnam War witnessed the revival of many ancient war techniques adapted to modern times. Among these, the mace trap stood as a brutal testament to how even primitive designs could be weaponized to create chaos and inflict serious damages. Inspired by medieval weaponry, the mace trap was both a psychological and physical warfare tool for the Viet Cong. The structure of a mace trap resembled its historical counterpart, a weapon consisting of a handle and a striking head, typically studded, attached by a chain or rope. However, for the purpose of ensnaring, this design was adapted and its lethality enhanced. The mace, usually made of a heavy material like wood or metal, was outfitted with sharp objects like nails, metal fragments, or glass. This ensured that upon impact, it delivered not just a crushing blow, but also piercing injuries. The triggering mechanism was typically a tripwire system. The mace would be suspended and often concealed among foliage or between trees. It was attached to a weight or pulley system. The tripwire spanned across a path or entrance and, when triggered, released the mace to swing downward or sideways with tremendous force onto the unsuspecting individual. Another possibility was a trail pendulum, placed on dense forest paths. In this trap, the mace would swing from the side like a pendulum. The impact was especially horrifying as soldiers often recognized the motion too late, and the sideways attack made evading it challenging in the narrow confines of a forest trail. The psychological impact of mace traps cannot be understated. The fear of an abrupt ambush from such a primitive yet effective device added yet another layer of stress to the myriad challenges soldiers faced in Vietnam. Seeing comrades injured by these traps and the ever-present risk of triggering them turned every step in certain areas into a nerve-wracking test. The mace trap was a brutal reminder of the nature of the Vietnam conflict. By merging ancient war designs with modern guerrilla tactics, it underscored the Viet Cong's ability to utilize every resource and piece of knowledge to create an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty for their adversaries. In Vietnam's unpredictable terrain, the battle between the old world and technology raged on. The mace trap became a clear illustration of how history's past can haunt and influence today's battlefields. Gas traps in the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was renowned for its diverse traps, but it also witnessed an ominous evolution in guerrilla warfare, the use of gas traps. Although less prevalent than some other physical traps, gas traps symbolized the shifting boundaries of the war, blurring the lines between conventional warfare and biochemical warfare. Taking advantage of the element of surprise, these traps attacked not only the physical body but also the respiratory and neurological systems of innocent victims. One of the types of gas used was tear gas, originally designed for riot control. It caused severe irritation in the eyes, nose, mouth, and lungs. Exposure to this hazardous gas led to tearing, coughing, and difficulty breathing. Another lethal hazard, mustard gas, caused severe chemical burns on the skin and mucous membranes and inhaling it could result in severe respiratory distress or even death. Additionally, the Viet Cong occasionally utilized homemade toxic gases, concocted by combining locally available poisonous substances to confound, incapacitate, and even kill their enemies. The application of gas traps was strategic and intended to deceive the enemy. Small containers, usually made of glass or fragile plastic, were filled with dangerous gases or chemicals. These containers were then designed to break and release the gas when triggered. The triggering mechanisms varied, but tripwires were more common. They could also be activated by pressure-sensitive platforms or manually by hidden Viet Cong fighters. Gas traps were often placed in enclosed spaces like tunnels, shelters, or huts to maximize their effectiveness. In these confined spaces, the gas could quickly reach concentrated levels, making it even more lethal, and the chances for victims to escape were slim. Although not as numerous as other traps in Vietnam, gas traps served as evidence of the Viet Cong's adaptability and willingness to exploit every possible advantage. These traps added another layer of worry to an already tense environment, reminding American and South Vietnamese forces that the enemy was continuously innovating, seeking new ways to maim and kill. The use of gas traps blurred the boundaries between conventional warfare and the horrors of chemical warfare, leaving a lasting impact on those who experienced its deadly effects.